All right, so as you know, really what this is for is just to give you more education for the implementation that you are already doing one-on-one with me. So this isn't like anything to be more so like specifically for you to watch, learn, and then always can just refer back to questions with me about if you are dealing with any of these things. So just look, learn about it even more. And then from there, then you could just figure out different things of like, hey, Diego, like maybe I need this, like maybe I should do this too, and having that extra hand of whatever. Um, but really, it's going to be a really in-depth uh, training on this. So first things first is a disclaimer of obviously this is not medical advice. Everything I'm doing is just for suggestions. But you obviously know I got more than your best interest in you. So. All right, so to begin things off, obviously hormones are chemical messengers that your body has. So they're communicating from cells to cells into your endocrine glands and sending messages all throughout the body for energy, for mood, for digestion, for losing body fat, for having healthy libido, sex drive. So the thing is though, when you manipulate hormones, that is still faulty. That means that if you're going straight to TRT, when you have low hormone, that is faulty because there's a root cause to why your hormones are imbalanced in the first place. Now, the root cause could be full-blown menopause. So, from that, yes, at that point, then you could have pretty much low hormone from that. But obviously, we're going to get into what are actually the true root causes, what are the different hormonal symptoms, hormonal conditions that an individual could have and is struggling with. So obviously, some of the common ways hormones impact quality of life, obviously reasons to why you're here. I mean, mood disorders, PMS, PMDD, weight gain, weight loss, sometimes depending on like hypothyroidism. So those are going to be some of the big things. I'm just going to mute everyone, unfortunately. But those are going to be some of the big things. Endometriosis, that's a big problem. I don't talk about that as much, but it should. It's definitely a big problem. Uterine fibroids, PCOS, obviously. We'll get into another actually training with PCOS because that's a whole thing. Obviously, perimenopause, women that could be in their 30s and even 40s. And I mean, from all the testing I've seen, obviously from women, like most women in their 20s now, we're talking about 25 to 30. I mean, unfortunately, even younger than that. And there's actually a reason to why those women are showing up with perimenopause hormone levels is because the low calorie eating plus the overtraining depletes hormones, but that's a whole different topic. Painful, obviously having periods, so PMS. Two, infertility. I mean, IBS even can cause that. Thyroid disease, that's either Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism. Hormone-based cancers, so that'd be estrogenic cancers, so breast cancer, ovarian, those type, and then obviously sleep quality and energy levels. So let's get into it. A lesser way that hormones impact your quality of life is obviously migraines. Okay, burnout, fatigue, poor stamina, sugar cravings, increased belly fat, hair thinning, brain fog, night sweats, diminished libido, difficulty orgasming at times, difficulty sleeping, difficulty with focus and concentration, and so much more. So your hormones don't just cause these things, or I should say, impact these things. It also will cause these things and even more. I can't even list them all. But there's so many things that your hormones will impact, or so many things that will cause you symptoms that are actually from your hormones. So if you want to heal your hormones, you need to heal the mechanisms and root causes behind the imbalances. So remember, when you're looking at your testing, when you're looking at an estradiol lab value on blood work, testosterone value on blood work, if you're looking at estrogen reading on Dutch testing, if you're looking at a thyroid reading like a TSH and T4, T3, TPO, TJAB, you're looking at any of these lab values, that is the end user, meaning there was a process of how your hormones got to that state. So if you're just trying to correct that lab value, like I like the thing is like let's say you have high estrogen when I read your Dutch test and I recommend Astrocord at that point. Sure, that's going to help with balancing out your estrogen levels. But on the other hand of things, If someone's already gone through like a flush, detoxing them, getting rid of toxins, we've already reduced inflammation, we're balancing out the adrenals, we're supporting thyroid health. Those are the other mechanisms that will actually fix the root cause as well of the high estrogen. Clean up the diet, reducing insulin spikes with low glycemic eating, and balancing your insulin levels. By doing all of that, that actually will help you fix the root cause of your hormonal imbalances. So this is why when women take HRT and they blow up because they're taking estrogen, they're taking testosterone, progesterone, they're not doing these other modalities they're actually. So the thing is that it's complete vitality because you have to look at legitimately the complete person and everything in totality. You can't just look at your hormones and think, I'm going to take a supplement for my hormones. That's why social media, that's why many people get hurt because they're taking hormones without, number one, testing sometimes. And then number two, they're thinking that to fix the root cause of my hormonal imbalances, I should probably take a supplement for that, which it is smart. But remember, that's inductive reasoning. We want deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is thinking my thyroid is off, so I'm only going to take levothyroxine. That is inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, what we do is okay, I have poor thyroid function. What are the things that cause poor thyroid function? And work on those things first rather than just jumping to the medication, the nutrient deficiencies, the cortisol dysfunction, the gut infection, dysbiosis, stress, trauma, autoimmune related issues. Okay, that's important. So hormone issues may be tied back to lifestyle, nutritional stress, and more. So the biggest cause of hormonal imbalances are actually cortisol issues. Now, if you actually understand, cortisol is a hormone produced from your adrenal glands located above your kidneys, but cortisol will actually impact what are called sex hormones. That is your progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen, which are very important because those are your cycling hormones throughout the month. So that's why they don't really reference cortisol as a hormone or say it's a hormone, but it is a hormone, but then they really just refer to as your sex hormones as the only hormones. You have way more than that. You have melatonin, that's a hormone, not just a supplement you take for bed. Melatonin's a hormone. And so there's so many other hormones that your body has that nobody talks about. So obviously insulin's a hormone. Insulin's a hormone too. You A1C, fasted glucose, whatever, that's a hormone. Body's insulin. Obviously thyroid is a hormone too. So your body is made of all types of hormones everywhere. Okay. Constipation, poor digestion can cause hormonal issues. And so, what I'm actually referring to, I'm sorry, is that if you have any insulin issues too, just like if you have cortisol issues, that will throw off your sex hormones. That's your progesterone, your estrogen, and testosterone. If you have poor thyroid health, that will also throw off your sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And how that usually goes is that with insulin levels, if you have high insulin, let's say you have a high fasted A1 or fasted glucose, you have a A1C of like 5.6 or 6 or 7, whatever, that's going to increase what is called aromatization. Now, the aromatization is the conversion of testosterone into estrogen, which is very common for a lot of males, but especially females. Insulin resistance usually increases when there's an increase of adipose tissue. That means fat cells. And so the more someone will have of that, the more insulin is getting released. The more insulin that's getting released, the higher the estrogen is going to be. The higher estrogen you're going to be, the imbalance you're going to have. That's then going to show up as the PMS, even PMDD, heavy periods, and painful periods. Poor thyroid function will decrease progesterone levels, leading to anxiety, migraines, and PMS as well. Constipation will lead to backup of estrogen. What is going to happen is that now your estrogen doesn't get to detox properly. When we run GI map tests, we look at this marker called beta glucuronidase. You have phases of detoxification, which that's something to talk about in another training when we talk about liver. But what happens is that when you are not able to properly get rid of estrogen outside of your body because your intestines are backed up because you have some type of dysbiosis, that estrogen is going to recirculate back in. Nutrient deficiencies, this is why PCOS post birth control is a thing. I mean, because birth control strips your body from nutrients. This is not saying anything's bad with that. Like that's totally cool. Like but just saying if you are like it's just depleting nutrients. So it obviously that's going to deplete your B vitamins, your zinc, your selenium. And they actually did a study. John Hopkins School of Medicine did a study. I looked at this. It was probably a year ago now. But women that were on birth control for I think about like, I mean, 10 years. I know it's a little bit excessive, but 10 years, they had a 200% increase in hypothyroidism. That essentially means they're guaranteed hypothyroidism. Now, is it other things that cause that? 100%, but it is relevant and is prevalent. Uh, Over and under eating, as mentioned before. What I see is I've worked with a lot of different males and females that are in their 20s too, not just in their 30s and 40s, that have hormonal issues because of this very reason, because they're looking for like a image. They want a specific image. So that causes so many different things. If you have, I mean, obviously, if you don't have a pituitary gland, then you can't release LH and FSH. So that's going to cause an issue. And then xenoestrogen, toxin, medication exposure. This is the main thing that I'd love to get into more with you guys because it is important. It's low toxic living. Now, there's already a lot of things getting thrown at you day in, day out, but this could be a specific tool for you to really hone in on and get right. Because if you figure out what are the triggers in my environment that causes me to flare up, or I should say, cause my hormonal imbalances, that's how you can actually heal. Okay, so you really need all the information. So let's get into it. So estrogen dominance. This does not mean that you have high estrogen really at first. It means that your estrogen to progesterone ratio is off. So what does this mean? I mean, I explain it here. So it can manifest in a few different scenarios. You could have a high estrogen and normal progesterone. It's all about estrogen dominance relative to progesterone levels. You can have high estrogen, but then also low progesterone. Okay, that's typically what I see. That's typically probably what you have. That's typically probably what you have. So, like, if you have any of that, that's usually the PMS, the heavy periods, the painful periods, the mood swings, the prolonged cycles, the missed cycles, the extended cycles, the short periods, the random periods. That's that. Now, normal estrogen and low progesterone, that's pretty common. I see that a lot. And then you can have low estrogen and even lower progesterone, which pretty much means your hormones are wiped out across the board. Estrogen is important, okay? It's not a bad hormone. It protects your brain. That means neurodegenerative, so helps you that. Helps you with your bones, collagen production, helps create a healthy uterus, especially for ovulation. And obviously, it keeps your hormones in balance, especially as you're cycling throughout the month. Um, so I this is important because most women that have these hormonal symptoms is that they're dealing with estrogen dominance. Almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed. Like it's practically guaranteed. If you have any of the symptoms as mentioned before, we look here, any of these located here, that really does mean you're dealing with estrogen dominance at the true root cause level. So I mean I got the symptoms right here: PMS, swollen, painful breast, heavy periods, clots, cramps, even histamine symptoms, moodiness, migraines, anxiety in the second half of the cycle, extra weight in the hips and thighs. Estrogen dominance in males is usually like um they call it like man boobs, they have midsection belly fat, they got all these symptoms, low sex drive, erectile dysfunction, you got all the things so for guys. And then obviously, the list I just prior mentioned that too for the estrogen. So causes of estrogen excess, obviously PCOS, ovarian cysts, inflammation. Pregnancy can naturally happen, DHEA, testosterone supplementation, because what happens is that aromatization happens. So this is why it's important that you're using support while you're increasing your testosterone levels, especially as a female, with balancing out your estrogen levels, because you can also increase estrogen levels just by trying to increase just only your testosterone levels. Okay. Obviously alcohol and sugar. So sugar will increase insulin levels. As mentioned before, insulin levels will increase that aromatization, processed foods, alcohol, poor gut health, constipation. That's why you want to work on your gut. Typically, depending on the scenario, though, it really just depends. Detox always, though, before uh, exposure to endocrine disruptors, environmental toxins, glucose and insulin dysregulation, and chronic stress. Those are going to be the main causes of you having high estrogen from the get-go. So there's a few different things that you can do for that. Now, I always try to get you guys the quickest wins, and how we do that is that when you do the intake stuff, it shows, at least me, just by symptom assessment, because we don't always want to treat the lab. The lab is great, testing is great, but we don't only want to treat the lab. Because quite frankly, I've had many people that have had perfect labs, truthfully, in my eyes, but obviously they don't feel well. So it's not always about the lab value. It's not always about what the labs are saying. It's about how you're feeling and how you're functioning. So that's important to talk about. But a big thing is, in my opinion, some of the best things I think is really obviously the Dutch test, because you're actually seeing how well you're metabolizing your estrogen levels. I mean, that's the gold standard. But another thing is blood testing. I mean, I started talking about more, but blood testing is so crucial, because you're not only just looking at your estrogen levels, you're looking at TSH, you're looking at free T4, these thyroid hormones, not mentioned here, but you're also looking at FSH and LH, which are those hormones that are released from your brain, pituitary, to make hormones. So those are all important. Your SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, helps, I shouldn't say helps, but traps hormone inside your liver, therefore making it less bioavailable, which then will cause estrogen dominance. Um, I mean, I ask you about food log. I mean, no one ever does it, but it's all good. But pretty much, if you do an over under eating, that's going to cause problems. Sugar levels, that's the continuous. I don't say continuous glucose monitor, but testing your blood sugars is crucial, and it allows you to do it without actually having to get a fasted A1C reading or fasted glucose. So just doing it at home, using it fasted. But the most important reading to ever get from how well your body's effectively using glucose, sugar, is a 2 hour postprandial reading. What is that? So when you eat food, let's say I have some type of carbohydrate meal with like berries, apples, sweet potatoes, whatever. 2 hours after I eat that, I want to check my blood sugars, because that shows me how well my body just, my insulin, my body started using those. Because what happens is you eat food, your blood sugar then spikes, and then insulin, okay, insulin, your hormone, is like the key that unlocks the glucose to get into your cells. So when you have insulin resistance, that key can't unlock. So what then happens is blood glucose stays elevated and doesn't get inside your cells, then causes inflammation, weight gain, fatigue, endo endothelial damage. That is cardiovascular damage. That is the number one killer in the United States. Cardiovascular disease, cardiometabolic problems. So, when you are insulin resistant, it is not only throwing off your hormones, it is not only throwing off your estrogen levels, it is causing you a plethora of problems. That should be noted. So, the biggest thing to help with estrogen dominance is obviously getting inflammation severely down. And the best way to do that is different types of dieting, but it's all depending on the individual, where they're coming from and what they've previously done. But they do like to recommend, I mean, sometimes it's a Mediterranean type diet, which is very high in fiber too, which then helps you with pretty much clearing out that constipation and gut issues too. Uh, Sometimes I like to use Hormone Plus Complete. I mean, some I don't know if anyone here, I mean, yeah, some people here have used that, but that one's obviously it just tastes good, but it does really help. The xenoestrogens. So really what this is what I'm talking about, the toxins, the low toxic living, is that instead of, I mean, I don't like to be anal about it because I think there's a lot more things for you guys to, for majority of everyone to worry about more. But if you're looking for that like 1%, then yes, most definitely switching from plastic to glass is needed. Cast iron, okay, stainless steel. Okay. When it says BPA, it's not honestly BPA. Like me, I don't drink anything from plastic. I'm drinking it from like whatever this would be. Like eating my food, nothing from plastic because it increases my estrogen levels, which then will decrease my testosterone levels. Now, it's like I said, it's not something for you to be like over anal about, but it's relevant. It's relevant for sure. Alcohol. Um, I mean, alcohol is its own category, obviously. Eliminating it completely is very helpful, medicinal, I should say, not just helpful, medicinal, meaning it heals people, but that's a whole different topic. But anyway, what I would say is, I'd say just like in moderation, really. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. So daily bowel movements, so lots of fluid and higher fiber, coniferous veggies because it's going to help with the detoxification of estrogen
The
level.
mold by now.
And so really, what happens is that when you eat coniferous type,
Hmm?
they're they're going to be very helpful with detoxing these hormones out of your body. The biggest thing to do with estrogen dominance is initially not aggressively train. Now, as you're going through things, I believe, I mean, it depends on where you're at. That's why it's so bio individual, but it depends on where you're at. Because if you actually have the right support in your body, then training can actually be very beneficial because it helps with your insulin levels, your blood sugar levels. So that's why I think it's still something that's still great to do. It depends. I think, like I said, it's all about individual to you. So I'd say right away, I think depending on who the individual is, training right away aggressively and going right into it can be very beneficial on many occasions. For most people, for some people, it may not be. So it all depends on the person. So that's really what this is about. So when we talk about like what are we doing for estrogen levels, the best thing we want to do with that is that remember from what I talked about prior, it's about estrogen relative to progesterone. So when I'm looking at estrogen levels, I'm usually actually not just using something to help balance your estrogen levels out, not just lower it, but actually balance it out. But I'm also going to use things that help increase your progesterone levels because most likely they're down too. So you want to use something like chaste berry liposomal, so that's something like Vitex. I mean, I like the liposomal because it bypasses the liver and just goes straight into digestion into your intestines. So I like that because it's not like the same as a capsule. The Estrocort, I mean, I love that supplement. I mean, it's a great one. I take it as well. So, I mean, that helps with actually regulating your estrogen levels. It has chrysin, DIM, iodinol, 3-carbinol. So it has all those different ones. Um, and really like it doesn't really depend on like where we're at with like I guess like body composition because like it's more about just like where the hormones are at right now. It really doesn't have to do with like body composition. But so the Estrocort, the chasteberry liposomal, that combo right there will eradicate hormonal symptoms if you are doing all the other things that are needed with your lifestyle and the eating and all the other things they have prescribed. Another big thing is obviously getting cortisol support in there, as not obviously not mentioned here because I don't know for what reason, because you want to get the progesterone levels to be increased. But the Hormone Plus Complete's actually going to fix the root cause. I like the EPA DHA, so looking at just pretty much the fatty acid profile in increasing your hormone balance. Methylation support is very helpful. That's why I really like the Dutch test at times because it's going to show us that COMT level, which pretty much just means how well you're methylating too. All right, so fibroids. Uh, so nearly 80% of women will experience fibroids by the age of 50. Okay, so uterine fibroids obviously are non-cancerous growths made of smooth muscle cells and fibrous connective tissue. Okay, so I'm not obviously the expert with fibroids, but what I have to say about it is obviously it's prevalent and it's mainly linked to I see it just a lot with endometriosis people. So obviously what medical conventional Western medicine will do is that they'll use obviously like some type of birth control, like hormone modulating medication, like a cream, I should say, and even surgical approaches just of removing. But really, there's a root cause to that. There's a root cause to everything. It's not that your body just woke up one day and you had a condition or a disease. There was an environmental adaptation that happened. So now we have to coach that environmental adaptation. We got to get out of the oxidative stress. We got to get rid of the inflammation. We got to get rid of the genetic factors. Well, I should say not get rid of it, but help modulate through it together. Okay. So obviously, risk factors of the fibroids are increased age, just ethnicity at times, early oral contraceptives at an early age, obesity, chronic stress, vitamin D deficiency, alcohol exposure, phthalates, alcohol intake, even as well. So the biggest thing with fibroids is that I always like to look at just usually the symptoms reside when you decrease the high estrogen you have and increase the progesterone levels you have, and you get your cortisol regulated. All is done through the Dutch test. All is done. All is done. Okay, so we're looking at the 24-hour reading, looking at how well you're methylating your estrogen levels. So with that, we're able to get what's going on. So that's important. So that's why we're getting that. We're getting neuroinflammation, so brain inflammation, and so forth. And it would be the same type of modalities with the same as the higher estrogen. So I don't want to get into that because it's already 30. So androgen dominance. So this is very oily skin, acne, PCOS, weight gain in the midsection, androgen dominance. Very common, not talked about, not talked about. Okay, so androgens are often referred to as the male hormones, but both male and female need androgens. That's how you build muscle and have vitality, strength, recovery, everything. So your primary androgen is testosterone, and you need testosterone. Obviously, you have testosterone throughout the month, cycling. But androstenedione, DHEA sulfate, and DHT, the androgen metabolites, that's ethylocalanolone, are all important. Okay, so androgen dominance is going to cause so many symptoms. Acne, oily skin, as mentioned, excessive body and facial hair, balding and thinning hair on the head, irregular menstrual cycles, mood changes, challenging body composition management. That means you can't build muscle and you keep gaining body fat, reduction in breast size, even elevated blood sugars, skin tags, difficulty getting pregnant, and miscarriages. This is why so many women with PCOS struggle with fertility. I've helped many people, many women, couples, I should say, because I believe it's both parties. I believe it's both parties, but many couple have children, and the woman has PCOS. Their gynecologist said that they'll never get pregnant, and what's happening is that they're not testing their hormones properly. They're not testing their androgen levels, ethylocalanolone, androsterone, two androgen metabolites tested on the Dutch test. Testosterone is also tested. DHEA sulfate, which is the actual bioavailable form of DHEA, all tested. Obviously, PCOS are symptoms and prostate issues too. Inflammation, big one. PCOS, so if you already have cysts in your ovaries, that will cause androgen dominance. Cushing's disease, I have to remember what that one is. Cushing's disease is when you have chronically low cortisol levels. It might be chronically high. I'll have to double check that. Glucose and insulin dysregulation, that's a huge one. We're always going back to insulin. So if you have imbalanced insulin levels, that can cause androgen dominance, really high insulin levels. Chronic stress, and then post-birth control androgen rebound. So getting off birth control and then having that rebound effect from that. So the biggest thing is not spironolactone at first. Spironolactone, metformin, no. Not at first, at least. Okay? I have my own partner telehealth clinic, so that does not mean I'm against these tools that could help someone. But at first, you do not want to throw in these pharmaceutical things right away. Should say put lightly. Okay, you can use natural things. So I like using saw palmetto to help with decreasing androgens in a healthy manner because you still want them. You don't want to just suppress them. It's like an autoimmune condition. Why would you suppress the immune system and just turn it off? Why don't you just support it? Like it just doesn't make sense. But that's why people heal with me and not with conventional Western medicine. Okay, concentrated ultra progestin. All right, this is a good one. It has myo-inositol, chromium, so that's going to help balance out blood sugars. I have to look. I actually just had a training on this. But anyway, Cordy's is a really good one. Obviously, everyone loves Cordy's. That's going to be a great one. Chaseberry liposomal. I mean, there we go. I think every woman would benefit if they took Chaseberry, if they took Vitex, or if they just took HRT, progesterone, which I do have through the clinic. So if every woman took that, I think they would have a lot better life. They would lose the weight. They would have better mental clarity, better mood, better digestion, better sleep, better hair, better everything. Okay. Inositol, berberine, EPA, DHA, alpha lipic acid. That's pretty much for your blood sugars. And then NAC. So NAC's a huge one. We're talking about glutathione production, liver detoxification. That's still prevalent with androgen dominance. Low estrogen, low estrogen, perimenopause, menopause, but then also people that are in their 20s too, in 30s. So obviously estrogen is very important. It protects your bones, your brain, collagen production, healthy uterus, having a baby, having a quality of life. Okay. Many many women's I think it's very common to actually have low estrogen, as you may think. Obviously, all the symptoms you've heard of high estrogen, but it's pretty common to have low estrogen. I mean, here are the symptoms: sporadic or loss of periods. Okay, no ovulation, infertility, low sex drive, vagina dryness, painful sex, poor lubrication. So if you have any of these symptoms, they're definitely probably low estrogen. Hot flashes, night sweats, joint pain, muscle pain, dry skin, hair, eyes, mood changes, cognitive function, moodiness, irritability, insomnia. Okay. And it's important because, I think at the end of the day, it's actually quite wild that no doctor is talking about this. No OBGYN has talked about this. No primary care physician talked about this. No endocrinologist talked about this. And so now we're at the point where you have to trust people on social media, which is wild, but I digress. But here you go. If you follow what I say, you do this, you get the results. But really, low estrogen is very, very common. Very common. And it happens for many different reasons. The causes of low estrogen, overtraining, here's the biggest one. So when you come to me, let's say majority, about 80%, you are no stranger to dieting. You are no stranger to trying to eat healthy. You are no stranger to that. You've probably spent your 20s or 30s doing Atkins, South Beach, Weight Watchers. You've been doing all these fad diets, low fat diets, and now we're here today, 20 pounds, stubborn weight, low energy, brain fog, can't think, can't sleep through the night because it has damaged your hormones. This is why we need to preach to younger generations about the the value of fueling yourself, recovering yourself. And I think it's getting worse. But overtraining, undereating, yo-yo dieting, Atkins, South Beach, Weight Watchers, keto, Jenny Craig, Atkins, all damaging your hormones. That is why there's no sustainable way where you have lost the weight and actually kept it off. because it's working against the metabolism. It's working against your metabolism. It's working against the system that your body needs. But if you work with the system, that also means your hormones. You can actually lose the weight and keep it off for the long term. High stress, lack of ovulation, poor circadian rhythm, poor pituitary function, thyroid conditions, hypothalamic amenorrhea. This is huge. Hypothalamic amenorrhea is very, very huge. That means that you have. So what happens is that many women that have PCOS get diagnosed hypothalamic amenorrhea because they've missed cycles. But what happens is that they're just severely overstressed and undernourished. That's why they don't have a cycle because they have low estrogen. So when there's ovulation, there's no spike, so then they can't properly ovulate. So then what happens though is that as you get to day 19 and so forth into your cycle, there's no increase in progesterone levels either. So you don't have an actual healthy luteal rate phase. So this is going to cause you the PMS, the PMDD, the painful period, the prolonged period, the random periods. Late perimenopause, menopause obviously will cause you low estrogen and low cholesterol. That's a whole different topic. Cardiovascular disease in entirety. But um, just like I'm not an endocrinologist, just like I'm not a gastroenterologist, just like I'm not a cardiologist, everything I say is suggestions, but obviously I got your best interest in my heart. So with that being said, is cholesterol really the issue with heart issues? I mean, you need cholesterol for your heart. Your heart. You also need it for your brain, your hormones. That's just something to think about. So anyway, getting lab work is crucial because I mean you're just guessing at that point. I mean, initially though, it all depends on the scenario where an individual is coming from, but you want to get your hormones checked. So that's like looking at your FSH, your LH, prolactin, estradiol. And if you have no freaking idea what this is, that's why you have me. So that like don't not worry. I mean, I explained to you the best I can, but you don't got to worry about that. Um, I like the Dutch because we're able to see a 24-hour reading of their cortisol levels. The big reason why people have low estrogen is because they're overstressed, overinflamed, undereating, overtraining, or they didn't properly regulate themselves after being on birth control that suppress their hormones in that type of like artificial way. But when you do all these things, then it's going to decrease your estrogen levels. That's going to cause you the symptoms as mentioned before. Let's get to it, okay? Loss of periods, low sex drive, dry skin, hair, eyes, mood changes, poor cognitive function, joint pain, hot flashes, night sweats. Okay. So the biggest thing about getting your estrogen levels back into the range to where we want them to be is really just feeding yourself up, getting enough nutrition in, getting enough calories in, reducing the stress load mentally, emotionally, and even physically, supporting actually the gut really too. It's going to be some of the biggest things too. So uh, there we go. Dang. Okay. Low testosterone. Low testosterone's even crazier. Um, so many women, I don't know if you need testosterone as a female. That I don't know what you need it. Losing body fat, having drive and like motivation, having healthy sex drive, like you need it all. So this is why we want to test all hormones and we're not just doing random things. Okay, so testosterone helps with collagen, sex drive, brain health, positive feelings, cognition, memory, bone, muscle recovery, obviously, for males, really good for sperm production. This is why it's important if you're on a fertility journey to not just have a female work on themselves, but both a male. Actually, about 50%. I mean, it's actually crazy. About 50% of infertility cases are male, but yet the woman is the only one that's kind of like trying to get right with their health. Just because a woman went through a miscarriage does not mean that it's actually her fault. I'll say it one more time. Just because a woman went through a miscarriage does not mean it was her that had the issue with the fertility. How that could even happen is that the sperm quality could have been not adequate enough to actually have a proper healthy pregnancy too. Okay. I'm not a fertility specialist. This is not medical advice, but this is from someone that's helped many people. Okay. So this is from clinical experience. So I think that's important to say. Because if you're trying to have children and your husband, whoever, whatever, is not looking to get their hormones checked too, get reducing inflammation, supporting their body with the vitamins, minerals needed to actually have proper biological function, then good luck. And I mean, testosterone rates are dropping like 60% year over year. So I think it's important. All right. So symptoms of low testosterone, low motivation, drive, depression, poor concentration, memory, fatigue, low energy, low libido, increased body fat, especially around the midsection, the abdomen, the back of the arms, the back, like the lower back. Reduced strength and stamina. You can't build muscle either. Difficulty building muscle, increased risk of cardiovascular disease, heart attack, and stroke. This is why I really do recommend women at least look into like HRT. That's why I have it too, at least when you're in menopause, because you're just putting yourself through something that it can be managed better than not get managed better, in lack of better terms. So what are like the causes of low testosterone? So lack of sleep, good quality sleep, stress, cortisol, abdominal HPA. So just meaning your cortisol levels are imbalanced. That's why looking at the DUSH could be very helpful. Low DHEA, dehydro, uh, I forgot the whole name of it, but DHEA is crucial. Not eating enough or low body fat percentage, low cholesterol, ovarian or adrenal insufficiency, hypothyroidism being the biggest one of low testosterone that I see. Because if you don't have enough T3, your T3, which when you have low T3, that's actually not just high TSH, but low T3 is the actual reason why you would have a under functioning thyroid, hypothyroidism. But anyway, low T3 is a big reason to why you would have low testosterone that then causes you the low motivation, low sex drive, and so forth. Because remember, your body works in unison, not in isolation. So what does that mean? When you have a gut issue, it doesn't just mean it impacts your digestive system. It doesn't mean it just causes bloating and abdominal pain. It will cause thyroid issue and hormone issues. When you have a thyroid issue, it doesn't just impact your thyroid. It impacts, as you can see, your sex hormones too, your testosterone. It talked about your progesterone levels prior and even estrogen levels. It's all working together. So your body works in unison, not in isolation. And what Western conventional medicine does, what your doctor is doing, your gastroenterologist, your endocrinologist, your OBGYN, your gynecologist, your primary care physician, your cardiologist, are not looking at your body as a whole. They're looking at isolation. Hey, and I'm not against Western medicine at all. I think it's great for acute care. Acute care. If I have a wound, gunshot wound, you would not come to me. If you got in a crash or something, you would not come to me. But if you are dealing with pretty much these chronic issues, like we're talking about people with years of fatigue, years of weight loss resistance, that's when you want to look at more of the functional approach. All right. So looking at Dutch test is really good. And stress. And so I think with low testosterone, it's a little bit like low estrogen. Obviously, your body's very stressed, inflamed, and then you want to get to the underlying factors too of why it would even be decreased as well for that. Now, the biggest thing is I like Jumpstart EC. It's going to have stuff to really help with increasing your testosterone levels, but then also balancing out the estrogen levels. Because what this is important. See, we talk about this. Your body works in unison. So if you try to increase your testosterone levels, you have to make sure you're not increasing your estrogen levels. So we talked about this when we talked about estrogen. Okay, so that's important and crucial. My favorite is the Jumpstart EC because it's going to have the zinc in it. It's going to have the boron in it. Okay, the Jumpstart EC is. It's going to have a little bit of DHEA in it too. And then even adding in ashwagandha because that's been shown to help too. I like using Tonkat Ali at a low dose, 200 milligrams for a female. for a male, like using 600 milligrams, because that's going to give you a healthy amount of testosterone levels because it's a natural type of herb and supplement. I like using, there was one other one that I was using. Can't think off the top of my head right now, but those are going to be some of the top ones. The Jumpstart EC, taking even Tonkattali, even as a female. DHEA could be very beneficial too when looking at the Dutch test. Okay. So that's all we have for that one. So obviously, getting like the correct sleep and so forth is going to be very important. Even weight training, resistance training is going to be crucial too. So, um, so yeah, tribulus, ashwagandha, as talked about before. So yeah. Anyway, that was everything what we have in totality for that. Is there any questions that you guys have? Say good on time. Um, yeah. So I'd say the biggest thing is when you fix, I'd say when you fix your stress levels, your gut, proper detoxification, that's really what sets the stage for fixing these endocrine hormonal issues that you're dealing with. So when I was focusing on a lot of the studying of this, it's the environment that you kind of have lived in that made you not well, the environment that made you sick. Okay. So with that being said, you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick, but it's also environmental adaptation. Page ashwagandha can interfere with thyroid, right? Wrong. I've had many women that took, actually, there's studies that show that ashwagandha reduces TPO antibodies. But what, I mean, I've only helped, tens of women's that get off that medication and re put their autoimmune condition, Hashimoto's, into remission. So maybe I don't know. But I would say that it could be definitely beneficial to have ashwagandha because then it will reduce cortisol levels, which then increases free T3 and then decreases TSH. That would be probably the best thing I would say for that. Um, Another big thing is that, yeah, fixing your thyroid issues is also a huge thing with your sex hormones because what we talked about today was your sex hormones. We talked about your estrogen, your progesterone, and testosterone, but we also talked about cortisol levels and then insulin levels. The insulin level talk was great. I think we actually, I have tomorrow, I'll probably be doing, let's see, tomorrow. I don't know if she'll pull through with that one, but tomorrow we'll have an expert, a metabolic expert in A1C, reducing A1C. So someone that's going to be very invaluable that you guys want to see and hear about her. See, we got all the resources here. We got it. We got to do everything we can to help you guys. So, yeah. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, let me know. But hopefully this was valuable for you guys, and I'm always here for you. So have a blessed rest of your night. We'll talk soon.